So the link between inflammation and depression is ancient, but it's exacerbated by the modern world.
Wow. Wow, that's fascinating. Now, another thing that we read a lot about these days is the biome. It sounds like that would play in there
Big time.
somewhere.
Oh, huge, right? So there have been these really interesting studies in the last few years. So the microbiome, just for folks that don't know. So 10 years ago, we thought of ourselves as discrete entities, sort of human beings. The cells in our bodies are mammalian cells. We now know that it's equally valid to look at each of us as actually a community or a universe. And in fact, if you counted up the total number of cells in your body, only 1 out of 10 are human. The rest are mostly bacterial, but there's also fungi and parasites. But about 90% of the cells in your body are bacterial. If you look at the DNA in our body, only 1% of the DNA in our body is human. 99% is bacterial, mostly, right? So each of us is a community. We're a compromise between the cells of our own body with their DNA and the cells of these little other creatures that live within us, that are with us but not of us. And our behavior, we increasingly think, is sort of a compromise of that. Now, the vast bulk of these microbial organisms, to the tune of trillions and trillions, live within our guts. It's been said that the most complex ecosystem known in the universe is the gut. But there's also huge numbers of cells of bacterial and viral and fungi cells in the lungs, on the skin. Anywhere where the human meets the world, there is this powerful community of microbial species that we call the microbiome. That's what the microbiome is. So it turns out that the microbiome of modern humans is profoundly different than the microbiome of the last hunter-gatherers. This has been done in a tribe in Africa called the Hadza, and their microbiome is just remarkably different. Western folks go live with them for a few days, and they already begin to look more like the Hadza. It's interesting. So it's not something genetic. It has to do with the way they live their life. But that microbiome that is so abnormal in the modern world is almost certainly contributing to a whole bunch of modern problems: allergies, asthma, autoimmune conditions, all these immunologic conditions that are running rampant in the modern world. Now that's interesting, but what's more interesting is that it hadn't been shown so clearly in humans yet at all, although it's beginning to. But in animals, you can take something like a mouse or a rat, and if you clear out all those bacteria in its gut and put in new ones, you can totally change its behavior depending on where you took the fecal matter from, right? So there's 2 classic studies. One is they had a strain of very anxious, timid mice and a strain of very bold, exploratory mice. They cleaned out their guts, but they collected, poop, feces from both those species and swapped them. When they did that, the mice that had been timid became very brave. The mice that had been brave became very timid. And if you said what happened when you did that fecal transplant, the mice that got the brave fecal matter had changes in their brain that you see when you give somebody, or if you give a mouse, an antidepressant. The bugs in the gut, they look around and they say, all right, hey, we want to survive, so we need to change. We don't want to be in this nervous little mouse here. And so they begin talking to the brain, and they change the way the brain functions. There's a study in mice showing that if you take mice that don't have a microbiome, so they've got completely clean guts, and you give half of them fecal matter from depressed humans and half of them fecal matter from normal humans, the mice that get the depressed human poop start acting depressed, right? Recently,
wow.